So, there's this really strange phenomenon that's been blowing up online. This whole subculture where people are, well, literally growling and acting like animals in public. It's gotten so big that one content creator decided to do a deep dive, calling it a pandemic of identity. Today, we're going to unpack her investigation and try to figure out what is going on with the people who call themselves Therians. The creator we're following kicks things off with a super creepy scenario. Picture this. You're out for a hike, enjoying nature, and suddenly you hear a growl. You look around for a dog, maybe something wild, but then you see it, and it's a person. This is the kind of bizarre encounter that's at the heart of this whole thing, and it's what sparked her investigation. All right, so to even begin to understand what's happening, we have to look at the identity itself. But the creator makes one thing crystal clear from the get-go. There's a big difference between types of Therians, and she draws a very, very hard line right at the beginning. Okay, so the main term we gotta know is therianthropy. It's basically when a person feels this super deep internal connection to an animal. Now, for most people, our source points out, this is a psychological or even spiritual thing. Identifying with the spirit of a wolf, not believing you are a wolf. It's more of a metaphor, a way to express your inner self. But this is where her investigation takes a sharp turn. See, she's not really talking about cosplay or people with a symbolic connection. Her focus is on this smaller group she's seen online, people who, she says, genuinely believe they are a non-human animal trapped in a human body. And for her, that's not just a belief. That's a serious departure from reality. And to really hammer this point home, she tells this story about her little brother. When he was 5, he'd pretend to be a cheetah. The whole 9 yards, crawling around, building a den. It was cute, it was imaginative, and, he grew out of it. It was a phase. What she's seeing now, she argues, is totally different. These are adults for whom it's not a game. It's their fixed and, in her opinion, obsessive identity. Okay, so this is where it all spills out into the real world, when a private belief turns into public behavior. The creator argues that when people start acting like animals in parks, it stops being about self-expression. For her, it crosses a line and becomes a straight-up public disturbance. And here it is, her raw gut reaction. This isn't some academic take. This is how she feels as a person just trying to exist in public. Seeing someone in an animal mask on a leash, she says it's not just weird, it's genuinely scary. It puts people on edge and just creates this feeling of unease. So this is the heart of her argument, right? Your intent might be one thing, but the impact it has on others is something else entirely. From her point of view, when you're acting like a wild animal in a public park, especially with your face covered, it's not just your thing anymore. You're messing with everyone's right to feel safe and comfortable in that shared space. So let's break down why she feels this way. She says the masks and leashes are what's really unsettling. She even compares it to characters from a horror movie, where the masked figure is this unpredictable threat. For her, it's not a live and let live situation. She says her immediate reaction would be to call park rangers or security. And she thinks that in other places, like her home country of Australia, this just wouldn't be tolerated by the public. And this brings her to what she sees as a huge contradiction. She points out that so many of these online groups talk about acceptance and creating safe spaces for themselves. But then, she argues, they go out and do things that make everyone else feel uncomfortable or unsafe. She just can't make sense of that hypocrisy. So you gotta wonder, is this just weird, or is there something more to it? If these actions are causing so much friction, why do them? Well, to try and get a handle on the psychology, the creator brought in an outside perspective. She actually talked to her housemate who's studying this stuff to get a more informed opinion. Okay, but first, a major disclaimer that the creator herself makes very clear. This is not a diagnosis. Her housemate is a student, not a licensed therapist. But she presents it as a really valuable perspective, a way to see how the professional world might start to look at this kind of thing. And what the housemate says is actually really interesting. Apparently, just identifying as a Therian is not considered a mental disorder. In psychology, it's just an unusual belief. The really critical line, is when that belief slides into delusion. That's when it starts to break a person's connection to reality. So, when does it cross that line? When does it become a real red flag? Well, according to her housemate, the alarm bells go off when the identity starts causing actual harm. We're talking about it getting in the way of school or a job, messing up your relationships, or when the beliefs get so rigid they put your own safety on the line. That's when it's not just an identity anymore, it's a problem. Which brings us to the biggest question of all, right? Why? Why would anyone embrace an identity that could potentially cause so many problems in their life? The creator has a theory. For the ones who take it to this extreme, it's not really a choice. It's a powerful kind of psychological escape. So the creator basically maps out this three-step journey she thinks some people go on. First, it starts in adolescence, when you're trying to figure out who you are. Then you find these online communities that can be like an echo chamber, where extreme ideas start to feel normal. And finally, for someone who's already dealing with stress or trauma, this identity becomes a way to cope, like a shield from the real world. And you have to ask, why an animal specifically? Well, the source suggests that when human life feels chaotic and painful, the idea of being an animal seems simple, pure even, powerful. It's a way to feel grounded and in control when your life feels totally out of control. Maybe it's not about becoming an animal so much as it is about escaping the difficulties of being human. All right, so after digging into the what and the why, we get to the creator's final take, her verdict. And she really doesn't pull any punches. It's more than just a critique. It's a direct message to the people she thinks have gone too far. And this is where her critique gets really sharp. She talks about seeing some people in the community adding these sexualized or flirty elements to their animal personas. And for her, that just completely corrupts the whole thing. It turns what could be an innocent connection with nature into something she calls perverted, disgusting, and even sinful. So what's her solution? Well, it's pretty blunt. She speaks directly to the people who believe they are literally animals and says, look, the internet isn't helping you. It's just reinforcing a delusion and, frankly, making the whole community look bad. She argues the only real way forward is to get professional help to deal with whatever is really going on underneath. When you boil it all down, her final piece of advice is just stay grounded, stay rooted in reality. Because from her perspective, being connected to the real world isn't some kind of trap. It's what allows you to build a healthy life and make good choices, instead of escaping down a rabbit hole you might not be able to get out of. And that's where this whole investigation leaves us, with this massive, kind of uncomfortable question for our time. In a world with endless online identities, where do you draw the line? At what point does someone's deeply held personal belief cross over into a dangerous delusion, not just for them, but for everyone else around them?